I think we'll wait about 15 minutes waiting for stragglers to come before you guys know. Why don't I have any projection? On. Thank you. So I expect that most of you want to start talking about midterm. How many want to start talking about midterm? Okay, midterm wins. I'm going to wait about 10 more minutes for stragglers to arrive before I start passing out.
I know how to ask scheduling.
Yeah, I'm using the thread pool. Yeah. I'm not gonna, I haven't covered that yet in class, and so I wouldn't ask something on the midterm that I didn't cover. But the ideas that are used there we have covered, and they're all fair game. But passing callable objects into a queue and all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't ask anybody to reproduce the queue code, but I might ask somebody to use a queue, write the code that the pump messages in the queue, and blah blah blah, whatever. Those kind of questions are fair game. But I wouldn't ask a question specifically about the thread pool because I haven't talked about it yet. I think we'll talk about it. I doubt that normally on Tuesday we don't take the whole period talking about midterm review, and so at the end I'll talk about the thread pool. But still, I won't put it on midterm. Okay, midterm review. So, one of the best things you can do to prepare for the midterm is to look at last year's midterms. If we could measure the conceptual distance, which we can't, but if we could measure the conceptual distance between exams, you'd find that the last year's exams are every bit as close to the exam you will take as the exam sitting next to you. The distance between this year's midterms and last year's midterms is virtually the same as the distance between individual midterms this spring. So what that means is that it's profitable to look at the last year's midterms. There'll be some questions that are really quite similar, some that are very different, but very much worth your while. One thing that you want to make sure you know how to do, draw a class diagram. You know, every exam I think will either ask you to draw a class diagram or a package diagram. And you got to remember, you got to know those class relationships, okay? Inheritance is a triangle pointing at the, attached to the base, and composition is a filled-in diamond attached to the composer, and aggregation is a hollow diamond attached to the aggregator, and using is an arrow going from the user to the used. Okay, so, and if I ask you to draw a class diagram, you should expect it'll be from some code that you've written, do something like that. I have on some occasions, said, here's a design situation, sketch a design, sketch a class diagram for this design. But most often it's sketch a class diagram for your solution to project XYZ. So, and when you do that, there should only be normally one class that nobody owns. All the other classes are owned by somebody. That's a very common reason for point deductions, that you've got essentially all the right classes, but a lot of them don't have any owners, and it can't work that way. Who's going to create them? Somebody's got to create those instances, or they wouldn't be there. So normally there's an executive that has no owners. That's where code starts. But then the executive owns some stuff, and the stuff that the executive owns some stuff, and it's not at all uncommon for one class to own another class and another class over here to use this one, but you'll only have two classes owning the same class if they're really owning separate instances of the same class. But if one owns an instance, then somebody else either is going to create another instance or use that. So you want to be careful that you get that right. So, I won't sit when I'm grading them and go through gory detail through your project to make sure that every arrow is going in the right direction and stuff. But, I can look at it, this can't be right because nobody can get to persist or something. So that's the mental model. Let's go live.
Too loud. Way too loud. Okay. So a little later on this morning, I will pull up one and we'll go through one and I'll talk about it. But, you're all aware, I assume, that you can bring in one sheet of notes. You can write on both sides. You can write as small as you want, same old joke. You can bring in a magnifying glass if you need to. I make the same joke every year at midterm time. So, fortunately, nobody has to sit through that same joke more than twice, because you only, My later courses, I tend not to. The design patterns and distributed objects, the exams are really presentations, so, But, so we'll go through that. I'll talk about the topics that we'll cover, and then we'll hand out the project ones. So, At the top here it says you need to know the difference between syntax and semantics. I often use those terms in exam questions. Syntax is the grammar that you use to construct a sentence. Semantics is the behavior that results from executing that statement. So semantics is behavior, syntax is the language you use to describe something. You definitely will have questions to generate code, to write code. There will be at least two. My mental model when I write the exam is that there are two code questions, but you know, other questions creep in that could be answered with code, don't have to be, or you know, use a little tiny code fragment or something like that. But there'll be two questions when you're going to be asked to write a significant amount of code. Probably one of them will relate to one of your projects and the other one won't. Okay. You don't want to be terrified of those. You know, if you can't remember some particular, suppose you need to use file system and you don't remember the exact syntax for get files or get directories or something, you can write your best approximation, little note, you know, I don't remember exactly, but it's something like this, and I'll smile and check if it's, you know, if you're doing the right thing, you know, check up, you know, you won't lose any points or almost nothing for that. Somebody who gave exactly the right syntax and you did this exactly the same thing except your syntax wasn't quite the same, they would get a 1 and you might get a 99, okay, 0.99. I grade on the basis of 0 to 1 for each of the problems. There's 7 questions on the exam, and so I add up your scores, divide by 7, and multiply by 100 to give you your grade. So your grade will be between 0 and 100, and hopefully it'll be between 90 and 100. Okay, with luck. So. Classes, composition, inheritance, aggregation, using, initialization, all of the class relationships, absolutely. You want to look at the compound objects and notice the initialization and move and you know, move copy and move sign and understand how they work. I wouldn't ask you to write something. I might. Probably wouldn't ask you to write something. That's a little on the big side for a, you know. I never ask you to reproduce code that I've written. Never on the exam do I expect you to reproduce the code as I wrote it. But I'll often ask you to, you know, I might ask you a question about something you did in Project 1, you know. Write the code for, all right. So. And there isn't one answer. On any of these questions, there isn't one answer. It's not at all uncommon that there'll be 2 people that'll give really quite different answers that'll get a 1 on, you know, they'll each get a 1 because they're good answers that, you know, they may have focused, one may have focused on one part of the question more and the other focused on the other. Yeah, it's okay. It's never a question of guessing what's in my head. Never. It's not that's not what this exam is about. Never about, you know, quoting some little dark corner of Straustrup's book. Okay, never. You know, it's just, my goal is to make, out of the 7 questions, 6 very direct and straightforward. If you know, if you worked effectively on the project and you've listened in class, there shouldn't be a problem. And I try to make one that's a little tricky, not devastatingly tricky, not arcane, but that, you know, you need to think about a little bit. And you won't always know which one it is. Okay, I don't always advertise, oh, this is the tricky one, be careful. Okay. So. Example, package diagrams, class diagrams, absolutely. Virtual function pointer tables you want to know about. Dark corners, you want to know the defects. I think they're important. It's important for you to know the things that can cause defects in code. Otherwise, you're very likely to write code like that. So, you know, could have a question about that. Temporaries. Temporaries are particularly important with move operations. So you need to know what a temporary is. You know, suppose I have a class X, and I write X paren. That creates an unnamed temporary object that lives for as long as that, you know, it's useless because but I might, if I want to pass an X object into some, you know, place where that it will accept a callable object, you know, I might create a temporary, just say, you know, if it's a functor, my functor, I might say my functor paren, pass it as an argument, that's a temporary. You definitely want to be comfortable with the operations that were covered in the presentation on abstract data types. You don't need to memorize all the code for that. That isn't the point. But I might ask you to write a move constructor. I might ask you to write a move assignment, or copy constructor, or copy assignment. And that presentation shows you exactly how. Templates, definitely templates, you know. I've used a lot of templates. You've seen a lot of templates in action. Good thing we waited. You've seen a lot of templates in action from me. You'll see more, you know, over the rest of the semester. So, you need to understand what specialization is, you know. Need to know how to construct either a class or function template. I showed you variadic templates really quickly in my demo in one of the, I've forgotten, I think it was in the callback demo maybe. I'm not going to ask you a question about variadic templates. They're straightforward, but I haven't spent a lot of time in class talking about them yet. We will. If not before, we'll certainly do it at the end of the class when I talk about template metaprogramming. But I'll probably talk about them before, you know, right after we get back from spring break. What the normal process is, if I possibly can, I will return your graded midterms the first class after spring break. So, you know, there's a lot of you, and I spend my, you know, you spend the 2 weeks before spring break working your tail off, and I spend spring break working my tail off, because I grade about 10, 12 hours a day, you know, just exam after exam. That's what it takes, because I look at every question, which reminds me. So you can bring in a sheet of paper. Don't copy big hunks of code on it. The chances of that big hunk of code appearing on your exam are virtually zero. And I see lots of people, they get a question that asks them to write the code, they don't know how to do it, and so they just copy something from their paper. Copy, 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 copy. You know, A, it wastes a lot of time, and B, you will get somewhere between 0 and 0.1 for that. If you say, I don't know, but here's what I know about that, you know, here's what I know about things related to that question, blah, 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 you might get a 0.5. You don't waste all that time, copy, 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 copy. So it's just a waste of time to write big hunks of code in your notes. It uses up valuable real estate on the notes. By the way, I strongly recommend that you hand write your notes yourself. I see a lot of people who copy their friend's notes, okay, take it to the copy sheet, copy, and what they do is their friend who wrote them is sitting there just doing the exam, hardly looking at the notes, and they're sitting there looking at the notes, spending, you know, 2/3 of their time looking through the notes trying to find an answer to that question, and it's not going to be there, okay. So, you know, handwrite your notes. Just that process of organizing it and writing it out will make it, put it right here, right where you need it, okay? Callable objects, absolutely. Functors and function pointers, absolutely. The syntax for function pointers for methods that you know, if you want to pass to a function you know, you want it to accept callable objects, now you want to pass a method of a class to that function, the syntax gets a little bizarre because a method pointer is not a callable object. You need not one thing, you know, a pointer to a global function, an unbound function, is a callable object. I just need to pass that pointer and it, okay. But if I pass a pointer to a method, I got to pass the pointer to the method and the address of the object. Not a callable object. And the syntax gets a little bizarre. It took me, I did a demo for you in a, I've forgotten what I called it, but it's in a project 2 help, I think. And it took me all afternoon to get the syntax right for the method pointers the way I was trying to use them. So I won't ask a question about that. You can rely on the fact that I will ask you probably to write code to pass things to you know, callable objects to a function, but I won't expect it to work for method pointers. Pointers to, okay? I won't ask you that kind of question. Couple more minutes and we'll pass out project 1. So STL containers and iterators. So there's a lot of details about the STL containers we haven't talked about yet and will later. I won't ask you any questions about that. But for example, we've used vectors and unordered maps and, you know, all that stuff. I expect you to know how to use them. Okay? Expect you to know what their performance implications are. You know, so. Definitely smart pointers, you know, compiler-generated functions, callable functions, aliases, range-based for loop, all of those things, you know, may appear on questions. I probably wouldn't say write this code with a range-based for loop, but it might be a whole lot easier to write with a range-based for loop. Okay, no, a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. You know, compiler-generated functions we focused on a lot, and you know, that's definitely fair game on the midterms. I won't promise you that every single thing on my list is on the exams. It isn't. But an awful lot of what I'm saying here is. So, every exam will have a question about one of the principles. Every exam will have a question about one of them. And you got to know more than just statement. So what I would do is, to prepare for the exam, I think I might write a really short statement for each of the 4 principles: the Liskov substitution principle, open and close principle, dependency inversion principle, and the interface segregation principle. Just write a line or 2 for each one. You know, a real compact description. Don't write anything else, but think a little bit about how would I apply this? Did I apply these to any of my designs, you know? Or in project 4, how would I apply this? I'm not beyond asking you a question about design for project 4. And you say, that's not fair. We haven't done project 4 yet. So I say, oh, yes, it's fair. You've had the project statement for since the beginning of your class, okay? And you should have looked at it to see where we're going and what you need to do. So, but all of my exams, I think every exam has at least one question that relates to some project work you've done in this class. But I wouldn't ask you to exactly reproduce all the code you wrote for persist. I couldn't do, in a reasonable amount of time, I couldn't do that. But I might ask you to draw a class diagram, that represented interactions between persist and payload or something, or whatever. Might ask you to write a query. Definitely, you need to be comfortable with object factories and interfaces. How do you write an interface? How do you write an object factory? So the widget, the widget demonstration is a real good example of that. Okay, I don't know that I'm going to ask anything about dynamic link libraries, so it's important, but I definitely could ask a question about casts or that would require casting. I can ask a question about simple exceptions, but we haven't gone through the exception presentation, so I don't expect you to have mastered the stuff in that exception presentation. But I do expect you to understand how to write a try-catch block and what the implications are, and what the basic rules for writing a try-catch block are. But we will talk about exceptions real soon. We haven't covered the details of I/O streams, so won't ask about the details, but clearly I may ask you to write code where you have to open files and read them or write them. Absolutely, that kind of stuff you've already had to do. There's some technical details of the standard template library we haven't covered yet. We haven't covered sockets yet. None of that will be on the exam. Okay. Okay, I think we probably have a quorum, so let's pass out Project 1 grades. I have a grade sheet, I have these sorted into 4 groups, so we just have to pick the, so what I need you to do, I will handle the paper, call out the names, and you can keep your eye. So when your name is called out, I prefer you to say here. I know some of you are bashful about doing that, so at least raise your hand and wave it around so Mikhail can see that you're here. Because if we go by you and you come back, I've already gone through 3 exams past you, and you come down to the desk and say, I didn't get my exam, I'll tell you to go sit back. Go back and sit down, okay? So let us know you're here. Where did I put it? Yeah. I have a graph of the grades. I forgot to make copies, so I will post this on my door early this afternoon, and I'll probably bring a stack of them with me on Tuesday, so you can compare, your grade with how everybody else did. So, but I don't have it to pass out today. Bao A.
Here.
Good, that's the way to do it. Good for you, Bao. Gabe Adams. Nishant Agrawal. Vikas Agrawal. Vishnu Priya. Gauri Amberkar. Namrata Arkal Good. Adel Armedi. Harika Bandaru, she's here. Vishnu Vibhu Bharadwaj. Ram Kumar Balasubramanian. I think I got too many syllables there. Naga? Ashwani Bat. Vikant Papatro. Akash Bosale. Swapnil Bors. Swapnil?
No, you don't.
No, okay. Adarsh Bodineni. Cao Yujing. CAOXUYING. Chen Beer. Oh, Wei Heng, you are here. I think I didn't get this recorded, so why don't you take a look at it, but then give it back to me?
Okay.
Okay. And by the way, there will be a grievance session tonight at 5 o'clock in this room. Okay? But, you know, only come if you believe there was an error in your grading, come and argue with the TAs. Or if you just want to know why, you know, I'm not arguing that it's incorrectly graded, but I want to know why I lost these points, you know, those are good reasons to come. Chen Ziyang. Himanshu Chabra. Chen Yu. Chu Tenming. CUI Tenming. Chen Lang Dan. Dong Cheng Lang. Yang Prasanna Dadwad. Du Yang. Oh, I got 2 for Prasanna Dadwad, and I think they both had the same. There were 2 Prasanna Dadwads, but they, I think 2 of you graded it, but it was the same grade, so it was good. I patted you on the back when I saw it was the same grade. So this one got out of place, so I'll have to remember that. Dong Peng Fei. Dong Peng Fei. Du Yang, didn't we call Du Yang? Okay. Tharut.
1 second, I think.
Du Yang.
I actually upload 2 files, actually.
Yeah, that's your grade. This was I think an earlier version. I don't know, but anyway, when I get two different grades from the graders, I give you the higher one. So you got the higher one. So let me mark duplicate on that one. Do you have a pen on you?
Oh, I do.
Somebody got a pen? Can I borrow your pen for a second? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Tharut. You can smile through it. Feng Ji. Two Feng Jis. Megan Fan. Feng Ji. What? Megan Fan? Fan Megan? No. So is that you?
Yeah.
Okay. So Fan Meng Chen. Ankita Gadji. Matt Gasparek. Akshay Goyal.
Yeah, he's here.
Good. Kaushik Godbole. Kaushik Godbole. Gaurav Gorley. Gorly. Guan Jingru.
Yeah,
Okay. He Young. He Ying Tang. Ying Ting. Ying Ting. Enogena Igeti. Yuxin Jiang. Eric Jiang.
yeah, he's here.
No, you're not Eric Jiang. Are you? Is that you?
No.
No, I know. No, there is an Eric Jiang, and it isn't you. So, okay. So, Jinzhou. Zhaojin. Shubham Jwatodi. Rajath Joshi. So we're on the K's. Akhil Karaturi.
Yeah, he's here.
Chetan Kadam. Gautam Kanakal. Ki Ling Yun. Ki Ling Yun. Apurva Kemka. Vaibhav Kumar. Angkor Kathari. Liang. Ang Lee. Li Jiang. Xiang. Lee Young. Lee Yun-ung. Yunong. Last name is Li. Lee Boha. Boha. Fred Liederbach. I think Fred got the highest grade. He seems amazed. Wei Liang Lu. Liang Quan, Quan. Is that you? Look at your name, because my pronunciation is awful, as you know. So, Lin Taojun. Lu Kongyu. Lu Yuan. Is that you? Look at the name, make sure the name is right. Okay. Lu Zihao. Okay. Anuja Mahajan. Kito Mehta. Chitali Mahore. Barath Mayana. Rohit More. It is More, right? Okay. Swapnil Mundra. Dwivedi Nilish. Nilish Dwivedi. Ritesh Nair. Namrata Nurli. Sharath Najendra. Sayali Nail. Okay, we're on the Pareks, on the P's. Vishal Parek. Dwani Patel. Pei Jehao. Samya Padmanabi. Sonal Patel. Patil. Saurabh Ponerkar. Tian Yu Qi. Chi. How do you pronounce your last name?
Yeah.
Is it
Qi.
is it Qi? Qi?
Yeah, it's difficult for foreigners.
Could you pronounce it for me? You pronounce it the way you do.
So Q in Chinese we pronounce it as qi. QI.
So it's
Not qi.
Qi.
Yeah.
Yeah, so don't tell me, pronounce it for me.
Qi.
Qi. Qi. I can't get the tones right, sorry. Okay. I tried. You advised me not to try, but I tried anyway. I like to try anyway, so. Sorry. So, Qi Jing. Chu Baowei. Qubowi. Vishnu Ravindran. That's an interesting name. I don't think I've ever heard Ravindran before. Is that Southern? Ren Qingpei. Honey Shaw. Nahali Shah. Himak Sharma. Saloni, no last, Saloni Jane, I think. No last name. Okay. So we're on the S's. So, Sneha Sarkar. Vishesh Shah. Sneha Shankar. Shreyas Shivana. Sun Hayung. Nikhil Shetty. Shashank Singh. This is Singh, S-I-N-G-H, the Indian name, Singh. I doubt that's you.
No.
Singhs are Indian warriors, right? The warrior class. I'm a warrior. I'd like to be called Singh. I'm a code warrior. Okay. Okay, let's see. So, Parag Taneja. How do you pronounce it? Taneja? Taneja.
Yeah.
I can never get the right emphasis on the many syllables. Okay. Devin Upready. He smiled. He knew I couldn't get it right. How do you pronounce it? Upredi. With a little bit of roll to the R. Oh, I'm jealous. Okay. Xing Yuan. Y-U-X-U-A-N. Okay. Yao Zexin. Z-E-X-I-N. Okay, we're into the Wang. So, Wang Weizhang. Wang Cheng. Wang Ruxin. R-U-X-I-N. Wang Zudran. Wang Yibo. Wenbo. Wu Kun. K-U-N. Zhu Datten. D-A-T-A-N. Yu Jialin. Jialin. J-I-A-L-I-N. Jinglu Yuan. Now we got you this time. Wu Ji. J-I-E. Hao Zhang. Zhang Hao. Jiechen Zhang. Zhang Jiechen. So that's Hao, and this is Jiechen.
Yeah, thank you.
Zhou Likun. Lichun. L-I-Q-U-N. Zhang Quinzi. Zhang Xiaohan. You were tied for the top grade, young lady. Give her a hand. Zhang. Yeah, he's here. He didn't wave his hand, but he's here. Zhang Jessica. Zhou Weiju. Maruno Maniar. Sorry, I made you wait. You were out of order, and then I set you aside, so I got to you last. Okay, so is there anybody who thinks they should have gotten one back and didn't? Good. How about that? There were a surprisingly large number of students who have not yet submitted a project. You know, there were 5 or 6 who have not yet submitted a project. I hope none of you are in that position. You can't pass this class without submitting all the projects. So, okay, thank you, thank you. So, I thank you guys for all your hard work. That was a lot of hard work. And all you guys did a lot of hard work too. Mikhail? I asked, did anybody not get one? So see me at the end of class. What we will do, I will look at your student ID, see if I just didn't pronounce it right, and if that's not the case, I'll look on the college server to make sure it's on the college server, okay? So there will probably be a second wave, so you'll have to wait through that, but would you do me a favor and send an email to all the, I don't think I emailed anybody about doing the grievance session, so just email the TAs. Okay, so back to the future. So we've been over all the things. There will be a midterm makeup for those who need it. Midterm makeup, if you got a low score, you can do a midterm makeup. The way the midterm makeup works, you can raise your grade to an 85, but no higher. So if you got an 84, that would probably be one of the last things you would do. You know, you would study for all your other exams and stuff like that, and then, you know, if you had time and energy left over, you might. But if you got a 60, you definitely want to do it. Okay. So, and it's not automatic. An 85 is not automatic. I do grade them. I'll get midterm makeups passed back that have three questions unanswered and you know, very weak answers. You know, that person, an exam like that won't get anywhere near. It's not uncommon for, it's not common, but every once in a while I'll get a midterm makeup that grades lower than the exam, the midterm exam. Now I make you a guarantee that you will get the higher of the two, your midterm or the midterm makeup. So if you didn't do well on the midterm makeup, you know, it won't reduce your midterm score. I'll make that contract with you. I won't do that. But I do read them. I read every single line of them, so I do grade them. I know that some students, you know, they think, oh, he's not going to read this. He's not going to do that. And they just write any old thing, and then they're surprised, why didn't I get the grade I expected? So. And the midterm makeups can be handed in a couple of days after classes end. So I'll accept them. I'll post a date, you know, sometimes as late as a week. It depends on how soon my grades are due. But for the projects, projects 1, 2, and 3 have a late fee of 1 point a day. Project 4 has a late fee of 5 points a day. 5 points a day. And the reason for that is my grades are due very shortly after the semester ends, and so in order to get my grades in, we've got to have your projects, got to have them. So make sure you, in your planning for the end of the semester activities, preparing for exams and other classes and stuff, you make time for getting that project 4 in on time. And it's due the last day of classes. So, all righty. So let's take a look at one of these midterms, go over it, one of the last year's midterms. And then as far as that goes, I am done. I'll answer questions about the midterm, but essentially I'm done covering what I think you really need to help you prepare. And on Tuesday, you're going to hear exactly the same. I'm going to do the same thing. So on Tuesday, what you can do is if some questions occur to you, you can come to class and ask questions. Okay, so let's arbitrarily pick midterm 3 for no good reason, just because that's what I picked. So, in what scopes can you declare a valid namespace? When is it appropriate for you to write a using namespace declaration? Why would you do that? So a namespace can be declared only at the global level or inside another namespace. You cannot declare a namespace inside any other scope. But you can nest namespaces. It's done all the time. So when you look at, for example, the C#, this happens to be C#, but it works the same way in C++. If you look at the directories, you'll see system.io. This is a system namespace, and nested in that is the IO namespace. So we use nested namespaces fairly frequently. So here's my answer. Namespace can be declared to the global scope, and the global namespace is the namespace above all the declared namespaces. Every file has a global namespace. Okay? And its name is : Okay? Empty, really, empty. So you can declare, suppose that I declared a variable x both at the global level and inside some namespace. I could distinguish them by saying : x or namespace : x. So multiple namespaces can be declared in the same scope. Not only can I nest namespaces, but I can sequence them. I can have namespace A terminate namespace B start. So I can have both a sequence of namespaces and nested namespaces. You should never write a using declaration in a header file. That forces every user of your package to have that declaration. If these are new to you, there was some class you missed because we talked about this. Okay. So you may write a using namespace declaration in an implementation file in order to use types and variables from that namespace without constantly qualifying them. But you should never put that in a header file because that forces everybody that includes your header file to have that declaration. Okay. And that may cause that user problems. Any questions about that before we go on? State the open-close principle. Hey, you can do that. Okay. How did you use OCP in your implementation of Project 1? Please be specific. And there could be a question on the exam that's identical to that. And I haven't given anything away because that was their last year exam, and this is this year's exam, okay? So they're different questions, even though they have the same content. In general, you won't find duplication. You know, I try not to do that. So software entities, packages, classes, and functions should be open for extension but closed for modification. The NoSQL database was written with template parameters to allow extending its use to multiple blah, 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 blah. Okay? That's fairly close to... I'll have to go back and look at my... because it turns out they had a namespace. The requirements were a little different, but they had a namespace. They had a NoSQL project too. But see, these are really direct questions. If you worked on the project, you should be able to answer them. Perfectly, maybe not, but you know, pretty well. What's the difference between function overloading and function overriding? When would you use each of these? When is it inappropriate to use them? So this is from the dark corners. Okay? So you don't overload across class scopes. You don't overload virtual functions. You do not redefine a non-virtual function, you know. You knew all that. You could have answered this question perfectly, almost perfectly. So, function overloading is the use of the existing function name with different sequence of parameter types that are used with the original and in the same scope, as the original. Overloading is essential in C++ for building constructors that initialize, blah, blah, blah. When would you use them? We should not overload across class scopes, and we should not overload virtual functions. Function overriding is the redefinition of a virtual base class function in a class that derives from that base. Function name and signature must be the same in both base and derived classes. The overridden function is allowed to return a covariant return type. If the base function returns a pointer or reference to the base type, then the overridden function is allowed to return a pointer or reference to the derived type. And we must override any pure virtual function in the base class. We may override any virtual function. We must not redefine non-virtual functions of the base class. Okay? Complete answer. And you wouldn't have gotten a 1 on this without saying almost every one of those things. But if you said 2/3 of them, you'd probably get a 0.92. Okay. My grading strategy is to be very generous with points until I hit the 0.9 threshold, and then it gets harder and harder and harder to get additional pointage. Okay. So to get a 1, it's really got to be right. Completely right. Write all the code for a class that can execute a function on a child thread, e.g. execute that function asynchronously. Will your class work for static and non-static member functions as well as global functions? Yeah. Yeah. So, got to be template type, okay, callable object. And so here's my invoker. I don't think did I demand that you had a return type? I don't think I did, but my example used a return type just to show you that you could. And now, so here's, you know, invoker : invoke that's returning a future return standard async. This is a great way to run something asynchronously. It's the easiest way, just async. Okay. We talked about async. Not the only way. Perfectly valid to create a thread, and you know, so. And sometime this weekend, I will post. I didn't find the place I know I did it, but I couldn't find the place where I was showing you how async worked. And so, but I have started rewriting that demo, and I will put that on the class account sometime this weekend. Probably tomorrow, but I don't know for sure. Okay, so, and you know, I didn't really ask for this main. I don't think that I asked for the main. I said, will your class work for static and non-static member functions as well as global functions? And so, I get for my answer a 0.97 because I didn't answer, will your class work for static and non-static member functions as well as global functions? I forgot to answer that, okay? So I got a 0.97, maybe a 0.96, maybe even a 0.95, okay? You want to read the questions carefully. If you don't understand a question, don't get up out of your seat, but raise your hand and I will come to you. I will answer any question about the question. I won't answer any question about the answer. Okay? So. And people keep trying to, you know, push that on. Yeah, but. Nope. Draw a package diagram for your implementation project 2. You don't need to include all the packages provided in the helper code, just the packages your code uses or is used by. Okay, so here's a nice little package diagram. And I showed the packages that were used, so this was last year's, you know, and so you don't know, you know, what's going on here, but last year's class would know what was going on here. And there's a lot of stuff back here. I'm just showing the ones that this guy uses, that's all. Basically, this was, they were doing dependency analysis, and I gave them a parser that built an abstract syntax tree, and these guys, so here's the, you know, this abstract syntax tree had all the information necessary to do the dependency analysis, and so mainly these guys were using that, and you know, so. But that's a package diagram. Given the compound object described in the diagram, write a copy assignment operator for the class D, assuming that classes B and C have correct copy assignment semantics. So I might have ask for a move constructor, move assignment, okay? Any of those are, so, you know, and here's an answer. Write all the code for a class with a member function that enqueues 2 callable objects. The class also provides a single child thread that dequeues the callable objects and executes them. So here is a class executor using work item equals struct callable object, you know, CL. This was really, the intent here is, even though I didn't say it that way, this is the main object and this is a callback. Okay, so really what's going on. So I want to be able to enqueue both the callable object and the callback so that I can, this is for a thread pool that's going to accept work items and also provide a callback function, you know, to handle the result of that operation. So this was one of those questions that was a little bit this way, okay? So far, they've all been very direct questions, right? Really have been direct questions. But this one is, enqueue 2 work items? What are you talking about? But, you know, so if you're going to enqueue, the block enqueue lets you put one thing in. How am I going to enqueue 2? Not one after the other. I just make it, I turn those two into one thing. Here's the struct, okay? And so now, work item just says I'm going to enqueue that struct. So, and very typically my solutions will do a little more than you're expected to provide, okay? So I may have a main or I may have some subsidiary functions just to show you how it works, but all you're obligated to do is exactly what the question asks. I don't expect you to have all the pound includes and stuff necessarily. I don't expect you to have a main unless I explicitly ask you. But I may ask you, you know, write the code for a class that and write code to show how it's used. So that code to show how it's used would be from main, but you just give it a little fragment. You don't have to write all of main, just give it a little fragment to show how it's used. That's it. So that was 90 minutes of work, which means that you have to work briskly, okay? You can't sit there searching madly through a copy of your friend's notes to find what you want, because you won't finish. By the way, if you come in with 2 pages of notes, I'll take one and tear it up. My choice. Which one? No, don't take that one. If you say, don't take that one, that's what I'll take. Okay? So, I only had that happen once or twice. A couple of times somebody came in and said, I didn't have time to copy it on both sides. And I say, oh, let me see. Rip. Okay. I'll do it. I promise you. One. And you can't share notes. If I see note sharing going on, I will go and I'll pick up the notes. You can't use cell phones. If I see anybody on a cell phone, you just finished your exam. Let me reiterate again that anybody from the 8 o'clock session must go to the 8 o'clock session to take the exam. The reason for that is that if I didn't say that, and you know, the morning session, the 8 o'clock section gets exams 1 and 2, and the 9:30 exam session gets exams 3 and 4. So if I see any, and I don't know, obviously, if I see anybody from the first section turning in a 3 or 4, you will lose 5 points automatically off the top, never to come back again. No matter how much you plead and beg, won't come back. And the reason for that is simply that if I didn't make that requirement, then this room would overflow. No one would come to this room would overflow, and people who are registered for this class would be sitting there lying on the floor writing their exam. Okay, so 5 points off the top if you don't come to the class, you know, the 8 o'clock class. Can you go? If you're registered for the 9:30, can you go to the 8 o'clock class? Yeah, because we got lots of room. You know. This is a little more convenient. This layout is a little more, you got a little more room to write, so, you know, you might prefer that. There'll be explicit directions for you when you come in. For the 9:30 class, nobody fills the front row. The rows are filled beyond that, and every seat is taken. No bags on seats, no empty seats. So, you know, if there's somebody sitting on the end, you got to go all the way down to the end and sit next to them. And the reason for that is, if there's an empty slot, okay, I have exams 1, 2, 1, 2, or for this 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. So with that empty slot, here's a 3, here's a 4. I can't fill that seat if somebody comes in late. So every seat gets filled. Okay. So anyway. That's it. Any questions? Fantastic. You're all ready for the midterm. Great. No questions? I'll be happy to go get a cup of coffee. Any questions about Project 2? Yeah.
Can you go through those process class ones?
Will I go through the process class? Yeah. if I can find it. So, oh, I got a lot of stuff up here, don't I? But I don't have the process class. So let's just open one more. Okay. Okay, so open. So let's go to 687, code, project 2 help, project 2 help spring 18, process. Now this uses the Windows API. So let's, let me go full screen here. This is using the Windows API, and the Windows API is a little, in my opinion, a little more complicated than it needs to be. I think you could safely take the position that I'll worry about what's going on here sometime later. Right now, I'm going to just use it. That'd be a perfectly reasonable thing to do on Project 2. You know, you're busy, you're trying to get ready for the midterm. I think you want to know what's going on here, and I'll quickly walk you through it right now. But, you know, later on, it might be good to take a look at it, but just kind of postpone detailed analysis for now. So, so my process class is a create function, an application function, a command line function, a register callback function, a set callback processing, a callback. And it holds a startup info. This is a Windows defined struct. And it's declared in Windows.h. If you looked at the top, you'd see me pound including Windows.h. So you have to give this to the function that creates the window. I'm sorry, it creates the process. And this is a struct that's returned by the create function to give you information about the created stuff. For example, maybe it couldn't create that. It couldn't find the class you're trying to create. And so now, so I have an app name command line and a callback that I am declaring here. And CB, using CB equals standard function void void. So this is a callback that takes no arguments and returns nothing.
There, why are you using WString?
So what happens, you don't have to, but the Windows platform underneath, the Windows API really is natively wide string. It's Unicode, what Microsoft calls Unicode, which is really quite close to UTF-16, which is quite close to wide string. If you could, there is an ASCII version. So the way most of the Windows API have, so create process has actually two versions. Create process A and create process W. The create process W expects to get a Unicode character, okay, and all Unicode processing. The A version converts it, so every single string you hand to it, it gets converted. Okay, so this is just avoiding that conversion. All right, and so anyway, that's that. So and this callback was just to provide a notification. I just had this to provide a notification that the child process exited. So, so here's my constructor. So I get startup info. This gives me, essentially it creates a startup info structure that has some fields already defined in it. And now I'm putting information. So this says I'm going to declare the position and size, and here's the position and size for the startup. I could have left them off, and it would have randomly, it would have done what normally happens when you start a process, is they just come, the sizes vary, and there's some algorithm that Windows will use based on your screen size and stuff. But I just picked these. Okay, and there's a lot more parameters here, and it could be useful to use, and so on. So here I have a wide to string conversion and a string to wide conversion that I will use. The API has functions, multi-byte char to wide char and wide char to multi-byte char, and they're more complicated than they should be, and they're harder to use than they should be. So I just created my own simple versions that work nicely and easily. Okay, so this just define the application that the process is going to run. So it just lets me, So here I'm accepting. So what I'm doing is my interface is accepting standard strings and I'm converting them. Okay, because this is going to happen rarely. Okay. But they create. I might be in creating a process pool, and I might be creating windows, 8 or 10 at a shot. So there, it's important that I don't do a whole bunch of extra copying. But here, it doesn't, for that user interface, that was my take. It wasn't. And I can pass it a command line, and I can give it a title. This goes on the title bar. By the way, if we had created our own application, you'd see this title on the title bar. When you run Notepad, you don't see it because Notepad overwrites it with its own title. It gets there after you get there. So it's called the painter's algorithm. You paint it, and then they paint right over you. Okay. And here's create. So if app name size is 0, take the default app name, whatever I made it, I don't remember. And else app equals string to wide, so now I'm giving that, a wide string. Now these are types that Microsoft defines in a header file that Windows.h includes. Okay, they're just definitions. Long pointer to string. Okay, and the T string is actually, this is a long pointer to what may be either a wide string or a ASCII string. Okay, it's just the way Microsoft did it. So, what I'm trying to do is show you whether some of these I'm not really using, I don't need to use, but I didn't want to just write null pointer in here. I wanted to show you what each of those are doing. So I can give it security attributes. I can't give it more privileges than I have, but I can take away privileges by doing that. So, inherit handles. So if I wanted this child process to behave like a thread, I might want the child process, for example, to inherit all my handles, like socket handles and stuff like that, and so I don't have to pass it to them. But normally, you'll say false. That can cause more problems than it solves, I think, sometimes. So I just by default made it false. I didn't give you a way to change that, but I would, eventually, someday, maybe this summer, I'll write a full-blown process class that does, and I would give you the option of changing that. Environment null pointer. This just means that the process is going to run in the same environment as the parent process. I'm not going to point you to some other environment. And current path. This just says the child process is going to use the same current path that the parent process uses. And pstart info, I'm just defining this pointer as the address of the start info because that's what the function expects. And this, again, will be returned by the startup process with information about the starting up. And here's my create process. Bool OK equals create process. And then, each one of these, application command line, process security, thread security, inherit handles, create flags, blah, 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 blah. And return OK, I'm returning true or false. So if it didn't succeed, I'll know, Now all of that, you said, gee, I understand all that. It's this stuff that I don't understand. What's this wait for timer callback, blah, 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 register callback? This is using some internal Windows stuff that I've decided is more complicated than it should be, and I'm going to get rid of this. What I'm going to do is I am going to create a thread and wait for single handle. Easy. Okay. Wait for single object on the handle. I could, I have the handle for the process. I could absolutely do that. So I'm going to do that. I've written a thread a thread pool, and you'll hear about my thread pool sometime real soon. You're not obligated to know about my thread pool for the midterm, but and I will probably pull a thread out of my thread pool for each process that I create, and then wait on the handle. I'll just do my own eventing because it's simpler than a Microsoft eventing. Microsoft eventing is probably faster than mine, but probably not by much. Okay, so they spend a lot of time fine-tuning, tinkering with stuff to make it run fast. So, but that's essentially the class. Okay, does that cover what you need to cover? Okay. Other questions? Yes?
Professor, I have two questions. One is, can a file be checked out of the repository without...
Okay, let me pull up the requirements, and we'll start talking about project 2. So, so now let's ask you a question again.
Yeah. Check out, can a file be checked out with an open second state?
Yes. I think the individual checking it out should be notified. Now, you're in project 2, you can't really control that, but I think I would just write a little notice on the console. You're extracting or you're checking out an open, at least one of the files in your checkout has open check-in status. Okay. And what you would do is you would send that message to the client in project 4, and project 4 would probably display it on the status bar. Okay? But I would just write it on the console. That would be a good thing. Is it required? No. But if I don't see it, I might be inclined to take off a design point. Okay? That's my way of, if I forgot to make a requirement. So.
There is one requirement that says that...
Let me hold that question. Let me address something I was asked about. Yuan, I'm not pulling up your name. Yeah, your first name. First name. Tianyu. That's what I was trying to. That's your first name, isn't it? Tianyu?
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. Yeah. So Tianyu asked me about that, and he wasn't the only one. There were other students that asked me, what happens if I have two or more files that are in a mutual dependency group? So I'm not allowed to close a check-in unless the files I depend on are closed. If they're mutually dependent, that says I can never close them. But what you can do is this. So as soon as I want to close something, I will mark it closed pending. If all its dependencies are closed, I'll mark it closed. But otherwise, I'll mark it closed pending. And then I'll go to the other file, And now I will allow you to close that if all the children are either closed or closed pending. Because closed pending says, I am not allowed to change it anymore, I won't change it anymore, but it can't be closed yet for that reason. So closed pending, so now you can that'll let you get around that mutual dependency deadlock, okay?
So is there a requirement where, let's say we have a file which has open dependencies, should we forcibly close those?
No, never. You never forcibly close. Even if it's your own, you don't, but especially if it's somebody else. Yeah, so the answer is never. And the reason for that is, let's suppose that you have a check-in you want to close and you depend on my file. And I'm checking it in, and I know I got a whole bunch of stuff to change. You forced me to close. Now, I got to have a new version. That old version is bogus. It won't work. It won't build because it isn't complete, but you forced me to close it. Okay, so never. But what you do is you just, if I am open, then you mark yourself as closed pending. Okay? That'll take care of that problem nicely. So I think you should. If you don't have a I think you should have mutual dependencies. If you don't have mutual dependencies in what you submit with your project, then you'll lose design points because you haven't tested everything. Okay, so if you have, then and you haven't demonstrated a checkout with those, one of the TAs will change your query so that it tries to check that out to see what happens. So you should really demo. You should do that. Okay. That's, I think it's quite straightforward. I don't think it'll cause you a whole bunch of additional work. Okay, any other question? Did I finish your question? Yes. Yeah. Yes. Wei Heng.
When I check out the file, should I check out all its dependencies?
By default, the answer is yes. Not just its direct dependencies, but it's the transitivity, all of them. So if A depends on B and B depends on C, and you check out A, you should get A, B, and C. But you don't get, A doesn't know about the dependency to C. It shouldn't. So you check out A, and you see that it's dependent on B, and now you check out B, and you see it's dependent on C, and now you check out C.
So I should check out all the files?
By default. Now, I think you should have an option that allows a user who only wants that one file to tell it, I don't want that, I only want that one file. But by default, they should get everything. What you're trying to do is avoid the case where, I want to look at your code, I want to build your code, and I don't want to have to know all 23 packages in your code. I probably won't. Okay, so. Other questions? Yeah.
So when we browse the files, should we show all its dependencies code or just show the code in the file?
When you show the code, so for browsing, here's what I think you should do. I think you should show the metadata and the payload and the children, because they're part of the metadata, but when you show the code, you just show the code. In Project 4, there will be a requirement that when you pop up the child, you'll have here on your interface links to its children so you can click, 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 click. Okay. So what would happen is when you pop up some code, whatever is in your links container, they would change to be whatever that code. Okay?
So
but you don't have to worry about that for this project.
So in Project 2, we do not need to show the code as your process class do.
You have to, there is a requirement for you in browsing to show the code. But I gave you, all you have to do is, you can just use that code just as it is. Okay, you can pop it up in Notepad, that's fine. That's all you got to do. You don't have to create an application to show the code. Okay? You could do it, it's easy enough to do, but Say this again.
In browsing part, if we are browsing for
Let's look at the browsing requirement because I've forgotten exactly what I said. So, cells support browsing of one or more packages by displaying package descriptions. The packages to be browsed are identified by the query on the NoSQL, blah, 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 blah. The full package text shall be displayed on demand, identified by one of the keys returned by the initial browse query. I didn't demand all of what I just told you. File name and description. I do want you to show the children, but maybe none of that, maybe not the payload, maybe not, you know, because I didn't say it here. I don't want you to go tear a whole bunch of stuff apart, but it'd be really quick and easy if you're going to show the description, the name and the description is really quick and easy to show the children. Yeah, so. But it's, if you don't show the children, you won't lose a requirements point, but you'll lose a design point. Okay.
If I say show the children as file name and description, is that sufficient? And
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I would just so the mental model, you don't want to, you know, pretty soon you'll swamp everybody with tons of details. I think just naming the children, child, 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 child. And the model is that in project 4, again, when we show code, we'll have links to each of his children, and you'll just click on, you know, to see whatever. So when I'm, you know, I've selected this file, if I don't double click on it, I don't pop up the code, but I show its metadata. You know, we'll see requirements in project 4. I don't remember whether I put them in yet, but I will if I haven't. You'll see metadata and payload information and the children for that one file. And then if I double click on it, up pops the code. Okay. And then, you know, and if I want to see a child, I click on the child link, and that just moves me into, okay?
Professor?
Yeah.
So if the query returns like 2 keys, and then for the notepad we have to display that 2 files.
No, only the file that you're currently browsing is all the text that you have. Okay, so you need to show the name and the description, and I would like you, I didn't require it, but I would like you to show the dependency names, just the names, not any of their information. It's actually a deficit, not a benefit, but a deficit to show that additional information, because, you know, maybe nobody wants it, it'll just clutter up the screen. Other questions? Wow, we're all done. Fantastic. So, when is project due? Project 2 is due on Tuesday, right? So that gives you 4 days, and then 1 day to study like hell for the midterm. I hope you'll be. You know, I think you should multitask a little bit. You know, the midterm is 1/3 of your grade. Okay, the project 4 is whatever the arithmetic is. You know, it's 1/4 of 2/3, so it's 1/6 of your grade. If I did my, you know, I don't do arithmetic very well at this time of the morning, and it gets worse as the day proceeds. Okay, so. Other questions? Some of you came in late. I guess there isn't going to be a second wave because, are there people waiting? A lot of them? Oh, okay. So then let me kick you out. Wei Heng, give me your project back. Yeah. And so I can get it recorded. Thank you. Good. Good morning. You're going to help me with the handouts? Okay, great. Yeah, okay, good. Has your process of honing in on an advisor made any progress? We talked about it, but was it all settled when we talked last?
Yeah.
My impression was it was still not totally settled.
Oh yeah, it was. I actually wanted to talk to you about
Okay. All right.
because there's a lot of current work.
I'm no expert on, but yeah. Sure. Yeah. I'll have some time. Why don't you just come back to me at the end of the class? Are you going to stick around for the? You don't have to, but.
Nikhil and I will just go grab something to eat.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go sit down. I'll pass them out. Yeah. Question. Cannot convert from I think the problem might be the way the project is, whether it's using Unicode or not. So go to the project properties and use multi-byte. So click on that one, use multi-byte, and pick Unicode. Yeah, now try compiling it. Other things may fail. I don't know what's good, but I think that might be. Okay. Why don't you post a note on Piazza? Okay. Quick question, but this will be the last one because I got this other group coming in.
I can't get If I want to use browse, I can browse on the console or use the notepad and open the browse.
To show the code, you want to use your notepad, but everything else you should do on the console. Okay. I can't answer any more questions. I got to start with the second wave, so all you guys, you're welcome to post on Piazza, or at 4 o'clock I'm going to hand back anybody that didn't get projects, so if there's still a few residual questions, I can deal with that then. Guys who are in the first wave, please leave so that we can get started. Guys from the first wave, please leave so that we can get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is hand out project 1. And so when I call your name, I like you to say here, so I know you're here, but at least wave your hand because Amar will be looking and he'll see if you've waved your hand. If we don't see any sign from you and I go by you and you come back and I'm already on the third one past you and you come and say, I didn't get my exam, I'll tell you to go sit down. Okay, so when you hear your name, okay, Gabe Adams, Nishant Agrawal, Vikas Agrawal, Vishnu Priya, Gauri Amberkar, Namrata Arkal Allgood.
Namrata Madan lately.
Are you Namrata?
Yeah.
If you're not sure about a name, just come down and check with Amar, and if it's not you, then you just tell him it's not me. Okay. A.L. Armidi. Oh. Ale. I thought it was Yule. I've been mispronouncing it all this time.
That's how everybody pronounces it. It's difficult.
But is it Armedi? Is that the right way to? Okay,
That's fine.
good. Super. Vebhu Bharadwaj. Ramkumar Balasubramanian. I can never get the syllables right on the Indian names. I can never get the pronunciation right on the Indian names. Ashwani Bhatt. Vikrant Bapatro. Akash Basali. Swapnil Borsh. Cao Yu Jing.
Here?
Is that you?
Yeah.
Good. Chen Bear. Chen Bear. Chen Ziyang. Himanshu Chabra. Chen Yu. Chen Yu. Come up and, if you're not sure, come up and check with Tenming Chu. Chu Tenming. Chu?
Yeah.
Would you? Don't say it. Pronounce it for me. Tenming? Pronounce it for me.
You mean my last name?
Yeah.
You mean like
Chinese way. Chu?
Sui?
Okay. I'll stop trying. I know I can't. I know I'm hopeless, but typical. Dang Chen Lang. Prasanna Dadwad. I got two versions from different graders, both with the same grade, fortunately. Pat yourselves on the back, guys. Dong Pengfei. Pengfei. Yep. Fan Mengchen. Ankita Gaj. Gaji. Matt Gasparak. Kaushik Godboli. Gaurav Gorley. Guan Jingru. Anojena Igeti. Igetei. Jiang Yuexin Eric. Jinzhou. Subham Dritodi. Rajath Joshi. Chetan Kadam. Gautam Kanakal. Ki Lingyun. Kelingyun. Apurva Kemkar. Vaibhav Kumar. Encore Kathari. Liang. Li Yundong. Li Yunong. Li Bahua. Lu Kongyu. Lu Zihao. Anuja Mahajan. Don't look so worried. You did okay. Chitali More. Keto Mehta. Bharath Mayana. Swapnil Mundra. Dwivedi Nilish. Ritesh Nair. Namrata Nurli. Ritesh, I didn't get a chance to look at that in any detail. Send me an email reminder right at the end of spring break. I am going to do nothing but grade exams, okay, until then. But I was interested in what you showed me in my office, so I want to look at it a little more. Not to adjust your grade, but just to see what you did. So, Sharath Najendra. Sayali Nail. Vishal Parekh. Dwani Patel. Pei Jehao. Yep. Is there just one there? Would you make sure I only gave you one? Okay, okay. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell. Saumya Padmanabhi. Saurabh Ponakar. Q Bawe.
Yes.
Chu Bawe. Chu. Qi Jing. Qijing. Vishnu Ravindran. Vishnu Ravindran. I'm sorry Vishnu isn't here. Ravindran is an unusual name. Honey Shah. Shah. Nahali Shah. Himak Sharma. Saloni Jain. Sneha Sarkar. Vitesh Shah. Sneha Shankar. Shreya Shavana. Nikhil Shetty. Shashank Singh. Yao Zexin. Zexin. Yao. Wang Weizhang. Wang Cheng. Wang Ruxin. Wang Zudran. Wang Yibo. Wenbo. Wu Q. Kuo. Wu Chu. Zhu Datan. Xudatan. Yu Jialin. Jialin. Wu Ji. Zhou Lingqun. Lingchun?
Yes.
Lingchun. Zhangju. Jessica. Put your, so Jessica, when you send your stuff in, make sure you have the XU,
Okay.
because that's what I have on my roster. So I couldn't find you at first. You were a process of elimination. Okay, I got all the other Wongs, and then so Zhou Weijun, Zhou Weiju, Du Yang. Okay, anybody thinks they should have gotten one and didn't? You guys will have to come to my office. There are 3 or 4 that came in very late that haven't been graded, but also sometimes a TA, while they're grading it, may not. They just may skip that, accidentally skip the zip, or sometimes, I may accidentally put it in the wrong place. So what we'll do, as soon as this session is over, we'll go to my office, and I can search the whole college server really quickly using your using your mail ID. Okay, so we'll find it. If you submitted it, we'll find it. All righty, let's talk about the midterm. Thank you. Okay, so midterm. The most important thing you can do to review for the midterm is look at last year's midterms. There will be 4. Just like last year, there will be 4 midterms. 1 and 2 for the 8 a.m. session, 3 and 4 for the 9:30 session. By the way, if any of you are registered for the 8 o'clock session, you must come to 8 o'clock. If anybody from the 8 o'clock session turns in a 3 or a 4, you lose 5 points right off the top. And the reason for that is just not arbitrary. The reason for that is if I didn't make that rule, nobody would come to the 8 o'clock session. This room would overflow at 9:30, and the people that are registered for the class would be sitting there lying on the floor writing their exams. So I will do that. I have in the past. I will this time. If I get a exam 3 or 4 from anybody from the 8 o'clock session, okay, you lose 5 points. So now, again, the easiest thing to do is to check these. The distance between exam 3 and exam 4 is no smaller than the distance between this year's exams 3 and last year's midterm 2. They all have about the same distance. For the 4 exams this year, I do not repeat questions. I don't just reshuffle them. They're not. They're different questions. I make up 28 questions every year. And hopefully they're different. Every once in a while I'm saying, ooh, I missed that one. It's identical to last year, but I try not to let that happen. Okay, so there are some questions that are intentionally, I might ask in last year, draw a package diagram for your project 1. And I might ask this year, draw a package diagram for your project 1, because they're different projects. It's what you did this year on project 1, not what somebody else did last year on their project 1. Okay? So, best place to start. Okay, and by the way, you don't need to be terrified of this exam. If you don't do well, you can do a midterm makeup. Now, the midterm makeup will raise your grade possibly to an 85, no higher. No higher. So if you get an 84, you probably don't need to do the midterm makeup. But if you get a 60, you definitely want to do the midterm makeup.